Hello everyone, Bear Hills here. I'm on a cheeky little forage. I came for a walk through these woods the other day and I actually found a nice little basket of porcini as well as some other cool finds, which I'll post a photo of here. Yes, so I thought, since I went looking in the evening and I didn't really have much time to look before it got a bit too dark, I've waited a couple of days. There's been a little bit more rain. Thought I'd bring my basket along again and have another cheeky look while I can actually see. So come join me on a fun little forage and we'll see what we can find. Been here a few minutes and I've already found a few things. We've got ourselves a brown birch bolete, or Lectinum scabrum. It's in the wider boletes family. As the name suggests, it usually grows with birch, but it's a bit soggy for my liking. It's got a fairly nice flavour when it's been dried, but this one's quite slug eaten and not really one of my favourites, so I'm just going to leave it be. Still a nice find though. Now literally the other side of the path, we've got something else. This is the brown roll rim, or Paxillus involutus. Now this actually is not edible. It can be quite poisonous. I think raw, it is definitely quite poisonous. In Eastern Europe and other places, they quite like them. They'll boil them for a few hours and throw away the water, and then apparently they're edible. I think they quite like to pickle them. But it turns out, actually after many years of research, that they bioaccumulate the poison. So even when you cook them, you can eat them a few times and think you're fine, but if you eat them a lot over a number of years, you can actually end up slowly dying of poisoning, which actually happened to a famous mycologist who I forgot the name. But if it can happen to someone like that, then you know that it's not a good thing to eat. Still an interesting find and an important one to know about. Now of course you can forage for mushrooms in theory at any time of the year in the UK, given the conditions are right, but there is an overwhelmingly larger selection of species to choose from, to find in the autumn, in late summer, between late summer and early winter. So this is like literally this time of year after a good rain is a forager's paradise. So let's have a little look. Now, one of the most important things to know when you're going out mushroom foraging is the correct habitat and environment that the mushrooms you're looking for should not only like to, but need to live in. Now, the large majority of fungi that produce mushrooms that we like to eat rely on symbiotic relationships with certain trees and plants. So knowing which ones of those your mushrooms need to and choose to live with can vastly narrow down your search. And there are some trees which have a much larger list of mushrooms that they host with. Right at the top you've got beech trees, closely in second are oak trees, and then a third I would say a birch, which is what I'm surrounded by now. So if you're in a woodland for those three things, you're off to a great start. Also, don't discount grass. There are a lot of mushrooms that will only grow out of grass, and there are a lot of mushrooms that prefer mossy conditions. So if you're in a woodland for those three trees, and also there's bits of grass and moss, etc., you are in the perfect environment really in autumn time to be looking for fungi. Now of course there are trees which have little to no symbiotic relationships with mushrooms. Obviously you could probably plot them all on the list, and at the bottom of the list would probably be sycamore trees or any of the maple family. as far as I know, there are no mushrooms that produce, there are no fungi that produce mushrooms that have a symbiotic relationship with a sycamore tree. So if you're in a woodland filled with those, you know you're looking in the completely wrong place and go elsewhere. So I'm quite happy to be in a birch woodland right now, because literally at my foot, I'll come and show you, we've got the quintessential mushroom. At my feet we have the quintessential mushroom, a very sluggy and albeit, but this is Amanita muscaria, or the fire agaric. Now, every book you read will tell you this is deadly poisonous. I don't think there's ever actually been a recorded case of someone dying of this, but I still would not recommend eating it. Places in Eastern Europe will boil them to wash out the toxins, but it's not worth it with so many other tasty edible mushrooms about this time of year. You can get high off it. It's not the same chemical as regular magic mushrooms, but it's quite unpleasant apparently. You feel a kind of stone drunk feeling, and you end up feeling quite sick and ill, and it just doesn't sound very appealing to me. So if I were you, I would just leave it alone. Just appreciate its beauty, take some nice photos, and also remember the fact that fly agaric often lives in the exact same places as one of the best mushrooms that you can possibly find. The porcini, or the sep, or as we say in English, the penny bun. The scientific name is boletes edulis. Probably the most tasty mushroom, and not only necessarily the most tasty, but the largest tasty mushroom that you can find. It's prized so highly and it costs so much because you cannot cultivate it. You can only be foraged. So the fact that this is here is a great sign, because it means there may be some porcini just around the corner. Now there's a few more fly agaric dotted about, but just to the right of this one we have something else. This is also an Amanita, but this is Amanita rubescens, or commonly known as the blusher, which I'll pick for you now. This is actually one of the only edible species in the Amanita genus, but not recommended for beginners, because there are so many deadly members in this family that it could be possibly confused with by an amateur, so it's best to stay away from. But it's still a very cool find. Found quite a chunky specimen of an Amanita muscaria, although this one's cap hasn't opened up quite fully. It's a good thing to try and teach you the characteristics of the Amanita genus, because it's the most important genus to know about for foragers, I would say, because it contains some of the most dangerous and deadly species on the planet. Now, all Amanita will emerge from an egg sac. This bulbous base here, the stem has emerged from this. And all these white dots on top are remnants of the universal veil, which is what will have covered the top of the mushroom while it was still in the egg sac. And obviously as it's got bigger, they've spread out on the top. Now, all Amanita will have white gills. That's pretty consistent. And they should all, unless it's been weathered off, and there's obviously a few exceptions which don't have a skirt, like the tawny grisette for example, but most Amanitas will have a little white skirt, which is what will have covered the gills. This would have been attached to the edge of the cap here, you see. And then it hangs down and leaves a pretty little skirt. Now, a lot of them have these little white dots on the top, or the veil remnants, but not all of them. Some of them just don't have them. Sometimes they may get washed off in the rain. As you can see, look, I can brush these off, you know. But these are some very important identifying factors. If you're very new to mushroom foraging, anything that emerges from an egg sac, has white gills, and has a pretty little skirt around the stem, just stay away from. There's no point risking your life over a mushroom. But I just thought that was a quick little tip. Now here is another interesting genus of mushrooms. Here we have a rusula, or the common name, brittlegill. Now, these are not recommended necessarily for beginner foragers because they are so hard to differentiate between the different species. Bit of focus. Because a lot of them are quite similar in colour, and the colours change a lot depending on conditions, etc. But it's quite easy to know that you have a roostler itself because they all have brittle gills, hence the name. They flake like almonds. See that? Now, as far as I know, there are no species in the UK that will seriously harm or kill a human, but there's a few that will make you quite sick, namely the beechwood sickener and a few others, because some of them have quite an acrid, hot, spicy taste, a bit like pepper, which can be so overwhelming that it does make you vomit. There are some tasty ones. The only one really worth eating is the charcoal burner, which is a similar colour to this, I guess, sometimes, but it's the only one in the genus which the gills do not flake. They're actually still flexible, so we know straight away that this is not a charcoal burner. Also, the stalk will often break a bit like chalk, like that, you see. Unlike some are a bit more fibrous, this one breaks off like a piece of chalk. Now I've just found the slug-eaten remains of one of the best edible mushrooms. This looks to me like it is, and well was, a bay bolete, which is almost up there with penny bun in taste and edibility. So that you can see that the gills have stained slightly blue, which is one of the characteristics of a bay bolete. This one, I don't know. I mean, you could eat it if you really wanted to, but I'm hoping to find some better quality out here. Here I found another mushroom in the wider boletes family. This is some form of xerocomoid. I think it might be the red cracking bolete or Xerocomus cristerion or something like that. Someone will probably correct me if I'm wrong. Now, these are technically edible, but again, it's just not really choice, in my opinion. There are much better things out here that I could find. Still a cool find though. Here we have another commonly found mushroom this time of year. Some sulfur caps. Now, these are not edible. These will make you very sick. Not quite sure why anyone would want to eat them though. They don't exactly smell very nice to me, but people must have done in the past. But that's quite a common find this time of year. Sulfur cap. Now, I've not been able to find any penny buns or bay boletes so far. I might be out of luck today, but I did have a good find the other day, so it's fine. I have found something not as good, but still pretty good. I found Lectinum aurantiacum, which is, as the name suggests, a lectium, just like the brown birch bolete we found earlier, and in the wider boletes family. It's also known as the oak bolete, and I'll show you. I'll turn you around just now. Yes, so this is the oak bolete or orange bolete, Lectium aurantiacum. As the name suggests, it grows around oak trees, unlike most lectium which grow around birch. This is supposed to be quite a tasty edible. I've not actually tried it yet, but we're going to try it today. There's a bigger one over here too, just hiding over there behind the brambles, which are currently attacking me right now. But we're going to pick these, and hopefully there might be a few more, and we'll see what happens. Now I'm walking in a section where I have never found anything of good to eat apart from orange and brown birch boletes. I've never found a porcini or anything that good, but I have just found, although it's small, a tiny little bay bolete. Yes, the bay bolete is probably the second most valued out of all the boletes to eat. A little smaller, well, quite a bit smaller, and not quite as firm, but the taste is just as great. One of the identifying factors is, look, the pores bruise ever so slightly blue, but there's no red anywhere, so it's not one of the dangerous boletes, as you can quite clearly see. No, I don't want to freak out too soon, but I've just turned around and I've seen a few more. There's a couple that are a bit past it, but it might mean that this is actually a better spot than I thought it would be to look at in the future, even if I'm a bit late this time. But have a look. A couple down here that I am very late to the party on, which I will obviously leave. That's a bit too far gone for me, I think. I mean, to be fair, technically you could dry it and it would be fine, but nah, that's just a bit too much for me. Just found a couple more. That's 4 smallish baby boletes in the basket. It's going straight in my basket. I've just found a very, very, very small baby one, but I'll leave that to do its thing. There's literally no point in me picking that at all. It's not even a mouthful. I'll let that get bigger and spread its spores, and maybe I'll pick it another day, or something else will eat it. Inside the root base of this giant oak, I found the starts of a very small beefsteak fungus. Now the other name for this is ox tongue, which I guess you can tell by the shape of it and the colour, and the texture is quite rough, like an ox tongue as well. Fistulene hepatica, or something like that, I think, is the Latin name for this. It does actually bleed and looks like Wagyu steak when you slice it in half. And I've eaten it, it's quite nice. You can make jerky out of it, which is actually what I'm doing with some at the moment that I found the other day, which I will show you in a future video probably. So we have a basket full of oak boletes and bay boletes. I say full, I've got a few in there. And to finish the day, one of my favourites, the parasol mushroom. Now, there's not as many here as there usually is, and they're not that big, and they could be done with being left another day, but it's right by a path. I know some kid's going to kick it over if I leave these another day, so I'm at least going to take 1 or 2 and leave the others, and then see what happens, because these are one of my favourites and I don't want to miss out.